Today, John is peaceful and valid. Today, John, it is well with his soul. Donna, you're in a season, but this will pass. In time, take the time, and it will be well with your soul. When peace like a river attended my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. With my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my face shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. With my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious dawn. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and oh, my soul, it is well with my soul.
November 19th, 1967. 3 companies of the 173rd Airborne Brigade are trapped on a remote hill in the highland jungles of Vietnam.
Papa 1, Papa 1, Bravo 6.
They're outnumbered and surrounded under heavy enemy fire. The soldiers are beginning to feel like they're in a death trap.
Lozada yelled at me that, Kelly, here they come.
Private Carlos Lozada mans an M60 machine gun. He's the last line of defense against an enemy that's closing in fast.
They were probably within 20 yards of us. There was definitely a lot of them out there.
And we opened up on them, and they opened up on us with grenades and RPGs and weapons. I was feeding the belt into the gun, and we were just screaming at each other and shooting these guys. They just kept coming.
It's 1967. The U.S. Army has been slugging it out with the North Vietnamese to control the Central Highlands for months. Now, American commanders are counting on the men of the 173rd Airborne to do the job. The war has been escalating for nearly a decade. More than 500,000 American troops are now in Vietnam. But the U.S. military has yet to stop communist advances, partly because of this dense forest. It protects the notorious Ho Chi Minh Trail, North Vietnam's jungle road for moving men and munitions into the south. In the last few days, large numbers of North Vietnamese troops have been spotted on a strategic hilltop near the trail, Hill 875. On Army maps, Hill 875 is so named because it is 875 meters tall, about 2,900 feet. If the NVA can be cornered here, perhaps the flow of enemy troops and arms can be slowed or stopped. The U.S. battle plan calls for 3 companies of the 2nd Battalion, 173rd Airborne, to march up the north slope of Hill 875.
You were always in anticipation of being hit when you were traveling. And you always knew it could be you. Somebody's gonna die. This was always in the back of your mind. There was just so much vegetation, there was no way you could see the enemy. But because you were in their backyard, they were definitely watching you. There's a big mountain in the middle of nowhere in the jungle. And those of us that had been in a lot of firefights, we didn't like the looks of this at all. We'd hoped that we'd had a lot more men. Before we headed up there that morning, Father Waters had a communion service, and it was very appropriate because we were all feeling kind of uneasy.
Major Charles Waters is one of the 173rd's Catholic chaplains. Waters is 40 years old and isn't required to be near the front line of combat, but he wants it no other way. November 19th, 1967. 3 companies of the 2nd Battalion, 173rd Airborne Brigade start up Hill 875, a strategic position held by the North Vietnamese. The only sounds that can be heard are the jungle boots of some 330 paratroopers as they begin the climb. The companies move up a narrow ridge of the hill. Lieutenant Bart O'Leary is the commanding officer of Delta Company.
We opened up on them, and they opened up on us with grenades and RPGs and weapons. And Carlos and I were screaming at each other, though we were only inches from each other because I was feeding the belt into the gun. And we were just screaming at each other and shooting these guys, and they just kept coming.
The first thing I did is I flipped out a couple hand grenades at them, just to kind of get their attention, or to stop them as much as I could. And then, of course, I started firing my M16.
The 3 Americans, John Steer, James Kelly, and Carlos Lozada, are now the last line of defense, protecting Alpha Company, and perhaps the entire battalion, from being overwhelmed.
Kelly is off on my right flank shooting at the enemy. And so I drop back, I cross the trail while Carlos is making a sweeping burst.
Ignoring the bullets whizzing around him, Lozada fires at the approaching NVA while slowly backing up the trail.
And then all of a sudden I heard the machine gun stop firing. And I thought, well, they're just reloading. No, this is not a problem. And then it didn't start again.
Then suddenly, a shot from an AK-47 slams through John Steer's neck and shoulder.
I grabbed Carlos and I hollered, I'm hit. But when I grabbed Carlos, he was slammed into me. And I don't know, I think it was like the same burst that got him and hit him in the head. Well, he come flying across the top of me, and I guess I about went nuts.
Well, Steer was screaming, and so I left my position to go over and see what had happened. And once I got over to where they were, I realized that Lozada was dead. I remember grabbing a couple hand grenades, throwing a couple more out, and grabbing Steer, and basically pushing him back up towards the A Company, screaming, hollering at him to move, move, move.
And he starts dropping grenades behind us, and that's what, I guess, well, that's what saved our life.
Steer and Kelly run for their lives. Now, the advancing NVA threaten to swarm over Mike Kiley's men, who've been hacking out the landing zone. Kiley frantically radios for help. The men on Hill 875 are running low on ammunition, food, and water. They also have many wounded in desperate need of air evacuation. But the North Vietnamese surround them, and a deadly curtain of fire is making it impossible for rescue helicopters to land. 6 choppers are badly damaged or shot down trying to get to the threatened soldiers. By late afternoon of November 19th, the 3 companies of the 2nd Battalion are surrounded on the hill. The men dig what cover they can and await the final attack. In the meantime, they can only call in artillery and airstrikes to keep the NVA off balance. Unfortunately, the artillery strikes have little effect on the North Vietnamese bunkers. Heavy logs and a thick covering of earth on top of the bunkers makes them impervious to anything but a direct bomb or artillery hit. On the radio, they learn that one more U.S. airstrike is coming in. In the gathering darkness, a Marine fighter bomber dives toward Hill 875. The exhausted troops hope it will be a successful strike and give them some breathing room. But their day is about to get a whole lot worse. A Marine fighter pilot is diving toward Hill 875 in the twilight of November 19th. He plans to drop his final 500-pound bombs to aid the 2nd Battalion paratroopers pinned down on the ground. The air controller tells him to drop where he can see napalm burning at the top of the hill. Perhaps confused by a friendly illumination flare, the pilot approaches on the wrong course. The pilot is making his run from directly behind the men of 2nd Battalion, on a course aimed right at them. That bomb lands directly in the center of the 2nd Battalion's perimeter. Captain Harold Kaufman is obliterated. Father Charles Waters and all the wounded he is tending vanish in an instant. John Steer, although gravely wounded, is still alive.
Blood was coming out of my mouth, my nose, and my ears, and I noticed my right arm was gone because I went to pick it up and it was just hanging by some tissue and some sinews on the inside here. I remember I cried out then, "God, don't let me go to hell." And I knew I was dying.
The bomb carves a crater big enough to bury a dump truck. Flame and steel rip across the perimeter, killing 42 men and wounding 45. It's the worst friendly fire incident of the Vietnam War. A third of the men in the 3 companies of 2nd Battalion have been killed or wounded, many from a bomb dropped by their own side. 4 miles away, Company B of 4th Battalion is ready to move out, but they must wait until first light. Meanwhile, the men on Hill 875 have no idea that help is on the way. All they can do is comfort the dying. Rebuilding the perimeter comes just in time. The NVA are quick to take advantage of the darkness. RPGs illuminate the night. AK-47s flash in the jungle foliage. Suddenly, NVA troops make their move. But the North Vietnamese attack is not coordinated. They concentrate on just one part of the line. The NVA do not attack again. The jungle remains silent except for the moans of the wounded. The dawn of a new day reveals the reality of what has happened on Hill 875. 2nd Battalion of the 173rd Airborne has effectively been destroyed as a fighting force. American artillery and airstrikes resume, but they can do nothing to help the men of 2nd Battalion. By all rights, this unit should have been pulled back. Those who are still alive are in no shape to fight off another major attack or even fight their way to safety. Their only hope of surviving is the 4th Battalion, which is doing its best to get there. A barrage of artillery shells is fired ahead of the moving infantry. The tactic finally breaks the NVA line at the base of the slope. Hill 875 is no longer surrounded. Throughout the morning, the NVA continued to pour rocket and mortar fire on the wounded and suffering Americans. But by afternoon, the North Vietnamese stopped firing, and 4th Battalion finally arrives. The battered, exhausted men hope their ordeal is over. The men from 4th Battalion take over defensive positions on the perimeter. The battered soldiers they replace hobble or are carried to the rear. Down the trail, Carlos Lozada gave his life to defend. Lozada will receive the Congressional Medal of Honor for his heroism. Father Charles Waters will also receive the Medal of Honor. In total, more than 150 men of the 173rd Airborne give their lives to hold on to what they had captured. Over 400 are wounded. Helicopters are finally able to get into the landing zone that was paid for with the lives of Captain Kiley and his men. Gradually, the worst of the wounded are airlifted out. Yet the fight for Hill 875 is far from over. For 3 more days, the men of 4th Battalion and a few members of the 2nd will fight more bloody battles to push back the NVA. Finally, on Thanksgiving Day, 1967, the top of Hill 875 is taken. After so much bloodshed and death, the North Vietnamese have quietly abandoned their bunkers and escaped into neighboring Cambodia. Other than a few shouts of victory, there is little celebration to mark the taking of the prize that required such sacrifice.
I'm sorry that I couldn't tell the guys I loved them back then, but I did. I was willing to die for them. Back then, I treated the guys so mean because I wanted to keep them alive, and I didn't want to hurt when they died, because so many of them died. But I loved them.
What we think of John. But I will tell his kids, the torch has been passed. The torch has been passed to every one of his kids and his grandkids. And you have to carry it, even to veterans, every veteran that's here. The torch has been passed. And you have to carry on his legacy, and what a legacy that he has. I remember when this place started, when it was John's thing that God told him to do. They struggle. I've seen John Steer feed thousands, and let me tell you, he's led thousands to the world. I mean, to the Lord, and out of this world. And he's also fed that many. But let me tell you something. He stuck it out no matter what. His race is won. So your legacy lives on. So remember what that legacy is and what he stood for. And he lived to see all his kids serving God. And that really made him happy. That was probably the happiest day of his life. And I watched his kids grow up. My husband helped him here, and he saw them grow up, fuel hustles here. I'm telling you, there was a lot of stuff that people thought it was crazy around here. But you know what that crazy man did? And I just thank God for being able to be God's friend. I was a hairdresser, and we spent a lot of time trying to think of pranks to do to John. And we almost caused him to have a heart attack one time, so we had to lighten up a little bit. But let me tell you, there was a lot that went on here that nobody knew about. They didn't come and see what was going on. But I just thank God for it. And I thank God for the men that started with him here, because they worked hard. It was blood, sweat, and tears. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I found, was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my has brought this near to you. His word, my hope secures. His will, thrill and motion as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow. The sun forbear to shine. But God who's called me here below will be forever mine. Will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
Hello, I'm Gary Sinise. It's an honor to pay tribute to John Steer, who has received 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, and a Silver Star for gallantry, courage, initiative, and his disregard for his own personal safety during the Vietnam War. I salute your valuable contribution working with our returning veterans, sir, helping them overcome the numerous adjustment issues in their time of need. In 1967, commanding officers Brigadier General George Blanchard and Colonel Gerald Overstreet awarded you the Silver Star for your exceptional gallantry while under heavy fire. In 1992, President George Bush awarded you the 682nd Daily Point of Light for the nation. Both of these awards received in recognition of valor shown in the field of battle. Today, the Sons of the American Revolution are bestowing you with the Wounded Warrior Award. Thank you for your service and sacrifice for our country. God bless.
In the fall of my 19th year, my tour was nearly done. I had everything to live for, my life had just begun. Then I learned just what a man would do to stay alive. I was 3 days down on high-priced ground on Hill 875. I was 3 days down on high-priced ground on Hill 875. I've been on ambushes, I've been on patrols. I could tell you things that would make your blood run cold, but I'm not ashamed to tell you that I broke down and cried. I was 3 days down on high-priced ground on Hill 875. I was 3 days down on high-priced ground on Hill 875. Brave men were dying all around me, but for some reason God kept me alive. He put his hand upon my shoulder and he carried me down Hill 875. God carried me downhill 875. Now there's not a day I don't recall when God came in my life. I know He could have left me there and made me pay the price. God gave me a mission, that's how I spend my life, trying to bring our brothers home. I know some are still alive. Trying to bring our brothers home, in my heart they're still alive. Brave men were dying all around me, but for some reason God kept me alive. He put His hand upon my shoulder and He carried me downhill 875. He carried me downhill 875. God carried me downhill 875.
He tore himself from the jaws of death. Smitten and wounded, he staggered and fell. But he rose again and took a deep breath and kicked open the gates of hell. One arm was gone and his leg was shattered as he wobbled on the brink of new birth. He clung to life and things that mattered, seeking meanings in things of worth. He stared down Satan on Hill 875, this battered but courageous youth. Though broken and torn and barely alive, he was bent on finding the truth. The angels stood in grave disbelief of the strength of this poor mortal man. They watched him struggle to find relief and prayed as only God's angels can. When the soldier finally managed to stand, a champion had risen, a champion indeed. He lifted to the Father his remaining hand, and Jesus dashed forth at the gesture of need. The angels rejoiced at what was done, and the Father shed a majestic tear. Wisdom had found his toughest young son. Love had spared his child, John Steer. Other soldiers have not fared as well, and still remain lost until today. But John walks point in the pits of hell. Going back, he shows them the way. Oh Lord, thank you for seeing me through all the death and sadness and fear. Now give me your strength and wisdom too, as you gave my brother, your son, John Steer.
Hello, everybody. I'm Courtney. I'm John Steer's granddaughter. I was doing really good before I got up here, so if I start crying, sorry. But one good thing is at least our tissues here aren't fixed. We had that problem on Christmas, and it was not very good rubbing your eyes with a fixed tissue. So at least we got some good things here. So, Hill 875, written by Sergeant John L. Steer, the survivor of Hill 875, the Slover Statute of 1967. On the side of the hill, they fought there for days. Their bellies were empty and their eyes filled with rage. Some wanted to quit, but not out of fear. They were just too damn tired and shed many a tear. Our commitment was strong, we'd fight to the death. We'd take this hill and communism be set. The folks back home, they just didn't understand. The press lied about who we were. We had fought for this land. Now, many years later, they embraced freedom's bell. Communism is almost dead. Communism from hell. As I lay there in a heap of 80 wounded men, a U.S. bomb dropped by mistake became their tragic end. Somehow I survived, but God had a plan. I don't understand it, because I'm merely a man. To the soldiers who lived, and to the soldiers who died, and even to the soldiers that committed suicide, you gained more than a country, a place you can stand. You earn the respect of becoming a man. Not just someone who would kill, but also someone who could cry, and someone that was willing to stand, and even to die. Let's see if I can read this. My grandpa was someone who was, will continue to be a strong light in my life. In 24 years of life, he taught me many things, from baiting a hook, as y'all saw in some of the pictures, to holding a crossbow, and just relying fully on God and trusting within His plan for all of us. I was lucky because I was able to experience many things that most kids, teenagers, and young adults don't get to experience. I was sitting in nursing homes and VA hospitals and meeting amazing people that if I didn't have, it was my grandpa, I probably would have never had the honor of meeting. I was able to hand out food in Chicago to homeless people and see the lives that my grandpa has touched. I remember even, as y'all saw in the pictures, riding in a Huey helicopter, which most people will never get to experience. I've always looked up to him with awe and adoration. He was always just a larger-than-life figure that I could look into from his amazing stories from around the world, just showing love and compassion. But one thing I did know was that he didn't do all these things so that when this day came, everyone talked about the amazing person he was. He did this because he loved, and he wanted to show people the love in every word and every interaction that he had with people. He didn't care if it was talked about. He didn't care if it was a stranger. He just wanted to show that love. So if there's anything that all of us can take away from the amazing life that was John Lawrence Dear, it's to love people unconditionally, and it's to show compassion to people daily, and it's to live your life joyfully, because we don't know when the last day is going to be, and we don't know how many people we're impacting on that daily life.
Hello, I'm John Howard Steer. I'm John Steer's grandson. Today I'm going to be reading one of his poems, Who Are the Real Heroes? And then I have a couple words to say after it. Through the dust-offs, hospitals, and all those fears, I met a girl, and she was the balm. For a while, she helped me forget about the numb. We had 4 kids. I couldn't forget the war, the guilt I felt for surviving the tour. And when it turned me loose, what am I here for? I didn't win Father of the Year. At least I got off the booze and the beer. I gave my heart to God's own Son. Jesus is my #1. Sometimes I forget my children, serving God's only Son. I spread the good news, salvation is through Christ, because He is the one who has paid the price. Now I'm old, I've run the race. I've helped a lot of people and led them to the faith. 34 countries and most of our states. I've sang a few songs and shared my faith. 7 war zones and I'm still here. It's amazing to me, and that's for sure. I put my wife and kids in harm's way. Not necessarily their choice. They didn't have a say. If you want to know about God's faithfulness, just look at my family. They've all passed God's test. They have followed me, a sinful man. They have held me up, so in the public I could stand. I receive the applause, but it's not mine. It belongs to my family. They make me shine. It's incredible to be here with my family today. And I just have a few words to say. I love you. I'm glad I get to be here with you all today, and it's an honor that I get to read some of his words and that we get to even hear his voice today. Hearing his voice is something I've done my whole life, and it's been amazing. He's had the voice of an angel, but now to really hear that voice, it just means a lot more. Even at Christmas time when we can listen to the old cassette tapes, or even whenever listening to some folks in Prison Blues, it has a new meaning now. With that being said, the Lord does call us who are not qualified to do His work. He calls us out of situations that we could never see coming. It's called my grandfather and my father. My family has had my grandfather and father through time. They've had their problems and struggles that they've able to overcome through these callings that they've had. And the Lord uses us in ways that we've never seen coming. As we saw in the video previously, no one could see that coming. We often fill ourselves with questions rather than following in faith. But as I came in today, I did see that banner on the wall, and it did speak to me. We need to change our ideas of what if we're not good enough, and simply change it to, even if I'm not worthy, how can I follow the Lord's call? It's something to aspire to, and I'm very honored to be here today, and I just want to thank all of you for coming out and supporting. It means a lot. Thank you.
A poem just hit me I wrote years ago. I wasn't even thinking about it. Let me just share with you. It's a little cold, but think about it. It's true. Wake up, America. You don't even know you're asleep. You sent men off to a distant land, your honor for to keep. 58,000 fought and died, but all were not brought home. Won't you accept responsibility and help us set them free? Many have died from Agent Orange, the cancer tells the tale. Others suffer from post-traumatic stress, wonder why they end up in jail. Wake up, America. You don't even know you're asleep. You sent men off to a distant land, your honor for to keep. In training, we never heard the word defeat. We were willing to give all. We fought beside men brave and true, watched many a comrade fall. You tied our hands. You lost the war. Then we received the blame. Don't you owe us anything? We suffered in your name. Wake up, America. You don't even know you're asleep. You sent men off to a distant land, your honor for to keep. Well, let me say something right here. You all are not asleep. And God bless you, and let's keep it going. This patriotism, I don't care who's president. Let's just squeeze them until they do what we want them to do. On the wall in D.C., which I had no part in, on panel 30 East and 26 East, there's over 300 names of my brothers that I fought with in Vietnam that are chiseled on the wall forever. So I love you all, and let's always remember Memorial Day. Remember our World War I, World War II, all of our veterans. And it's so easy to forget our vets from Iraq and Afghanistan and other places, South America and various places where we stick our nose in. Sometimes I'm not sure we should, but that's not my business. But anyway, God bless you. And Paul, I love you, brother. I love you, and I love what you do. And this is the most beautiful motorcycle I've ever seen. And not just because it has my picture on it, but that helps. Thank
you. He was the eldest of 6 kids. I didn't know him well when I was small. As I grew up, there's 13 years between us. As I grew up, I realized he would become one of my heroes. John wasn't drafted, no sir. He joined the Army when he was a teenager, gung-ho to start a new adventure. Doing his duty as a soldier, John was gravely injured on Hill 875 in Dak To in Vietnam. His life changed in an instant from a scrappy teenager to a man fighting for his life. So many brave men were killed or wounded that fateful day in November 1967. I bless and thank them all. As John lay clinging to life, he called out to Jesus, asking only for him to let him live through the horror. In return, he promised to serve him for the rest of his days. John made good on his promise tenfold. John spent many months in the hospital after Vietnam, recovering from his injuries. He met and married the love of his life, Donna. Did you know he met her while he was recovering in Denver? He would sneak out of the hospital to go find her at a bar. At a where? At the store. Oh, at the store. It wasn't the bar, it was the store.
The store was the name of the
She
bar.
actually was from Minnesota, and she had been in Denver with her friend, and they were living there for a short time, and John met her there, which is really cool, I mean. But anyway, Donna would turn out to be the angel of our family, an angel provided
personally by Jesus. The good Lord had a new servant, and he wasn't taking any chances. He had to send the best. Amen. Donna soon found out what a crazy ride her new life would become. In a short time, she would become wife, mother, housekeeper, nurse, cook, secretary, and roadie. Soon she stood by John and everything he wanted to do, and packed up and moved anywhere he was led. I stopped counting after 30 moves. Just after settling in, they'd be on a new adventure and move again. I was always so proud of John. When he was ordained, who knew it would lead to touching the lives of millions. Charitable visits to numerous countries, preaching at many churches, marrying hundreds of couples. He and Donna kept so busy. John would give his testimony and sing at veterans reunions across the country. He founded Fort Steer, currently John 3:16, produced countless gospel CDs, wrote 3 books. There was nothing that could stop this new soldier of Christ. As the years flew by, Vietnam would take a toll on John's body. Hundreds of hospital visits and surgeries. It never seemed to slow him down. Even as he laid in bed in pain, he was always contemplating his next move. A few years ago, John's health took a bad turn. With the onset of heart failure, after healing from more surgeries, he thought it would be like old times. The spirit was willing, but the heart was weak. He slowed down a bit, but it didn't deter him from wanting to minister to all who would listen. He didn't want to disappoint and not show at veterans reunions. Donna would arrange the annual schedule, do the packing, a lot of the driving, setting up stage areas, etc. So John could once again take the stage and tell everyone about Jesus. Soon his body became too weak to do all his mind wanted to do, and some of his engagements need to be canceled or not rebooked. There was no way he could make all of them. This was so hard on John. He loved all his veteran friends and acquaintances dearly and didn't want to disappoint anyone. The toughest thing he did was to give up doing what he loved. In his final year, he spent much of his time in bed. He was in so much pain. He was hallucinating at times and had a tough time breathing and walking. I could tell the Lord would be coming for him. It was so hard to believe that I would soon have to face the reality of losing my big brother. I know it would be selfish to want him to continue his life in so much pain. I love him so much, my heart aches. Yes, John became one of my heroes. I have never known anyone else who has touched so many hearts and helped so many find Jesus. God's soldier is now at peace, and he has fulfilled his promise on that fateful day in Vietnam on Hill 875. Rest in peace, John. I love you. Amen.
how we cried the day you left us. Gathered round the great trees, wish I could see those angels' faces when we hear sweet chorus sing. Go inside on that mountain, sung your word, gone every song. Go to heaven shouting, loving Father and Son. Go inside on that mountain, sung your word, gone earth is done. Go to heaven shouting, love for Father and Son. Love for Father and Son. I saw a blind man tapping along, losing his way as he pressed through life's throng. Tears filled my eyes. I said, "Friend, you can't see." With a smile on his face, he replied to me, "I see all my friends in Hollywood Square. What a wonderful time we'll all have up there. We're gonna sing and praise Jesus, His glory to share, and we'll not be one line there in Hollywood Square." I saw a cripple dragging his feet. He could not walk like we do down the street. I said, "My friend, I've been sorry for you." But he said, "Up in heaven, I'm gonna walk just like you."
I saw an old man gasping for breath. Soon he'd be gone as his eyes closed in death. He looks like me and said, "My friend, walk the soul as I hold up to heaven. How about you?"
My grandpa is John Steer. He was in the Army. He lives in Arkansas. He is a very, very nice guy. And John Steer has CDs. He's famous. And he's very, very nice. He has lots of CDs. We have lots of his CDs. He's very good at singing. He's just wonderful. So we're going to listen to half of the song, and then it shouldn't be that long. Okay?
Eagle will fly, and it's gonna be hell when you hear Mother Freedom start ringing her bell, and you feel like the whole wide world raining down on you. Over up to you, courtesy
as a red, white, and blue.
Justice will be served and the battle will rage. This big dog will bite.
I told my class that my papa got 2,000 different medals and he got 2 Purple Hearts, and I told him it has George Washington on it, and this means that it got 2. I told the class that, and I told the class this medal is very important. And I showed it in afternoon care. I showed it to Miss Kelly and Miss W's. And Miss Gallant said she loves it.
She does. Do you remember what Papa got that medal for?
For getting shot a lot of times and for getting his arm shot off.
Yeah, and what war was that in?
Vietnam War.
Yeah. Are you proud of your Papa?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anything else you want to say about it?
It is super special, and my Papa said I can bring it to school only for one day.
Okay, good job.